추천. 미니든 미스치. 미니든 미스치. 수고도 마르솔란. 아그라 추천. 미니든 미스치. 미니.
Boy, young one, are you all right?
아그라 추천. 미니든 미스치. 미니든 미스치.
Nerel?
그도
Oh, you're not well. Please, 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 my child, let me help you.
Stay away from me!
Nerel! Is that how I raised you?
No, Mother. But I must carry this burden alone. I must get to Akarat's tomb.
But look at you. You're killing yourself.
I don't know how much longer I can...
I'm here, little magpie.
I missed you so much.
I'm so proud of you. But now, I need you to give up.
No. Of course it's you! You monster! Let go of me!
Let go. No. You made a choice. And I warned you, little magpie. There would be consequences.
No! I control the stone!
You hold the stone. You control nothing.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I could use some help.
Hello Diablo community, I'm Adam Fletcher, Community Director for Diablo. Welcome to our Spiritborn Showcase, where we're doing a deep dive for this all-new class coming to Diablo 4, which will include a series of interviews, followed by Q&A from Twitch chat. I'm joined here today with Game Director Brent Gibson.
Thanks, Adam. We've been working hard to make something unique for Diablo, and we're finally here to actually talk about it.
Brent, I can remember us at BlizzCon where we showed off our very first cinematic for Vessel of Hatred. Now we're actually here to showcase the Spiritborn for the first time. We're glad to have you back for the full reveal.
Thanks. We've set out to make an all-new class that comes from the jungles of Nahantu, an apex predator with a deep connection to the spirit realm. So, without further ado, let's kick off this deep dive to the Spiritborn.
Only a few among my people can become Spiritborn. As children, the most promising face judgment in the mist. Our trial begins and ends with pain. Those who are not called are culled. For the weak, all paths end here. For the worthy, that path leads to power beyond compare, and a sacred charge to wield it well. Though the mortal world was designed to break us, our hearts, our minds, our bodies, there is another which makes us bold. We are with fear. We are without equal. We walk with the ancient guardians of the unformed lands. Their power is our power. Their cause is our cause. We forge unbreakable bonds in the spirit realm to defeat the horrors of this one. For we are spirit-born.
Madre mía, tengo el pene mirando para Francia ahora mismo. La madre que me parió.
Wow, and there it is, the first look at the Spiritborn, the apex predator from the jungle. Awesome to finally show it off, and what an incredible trailer. To talk more about the Spiritborn, we would like to introduce Eleni Rivera Colon, narrative designer on Diablo 4. Welcome, Eleni.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here to talk about the Spiritborn class. I'm also a little nervous.
It's okay. We're live. We're doing this live here for everyone. But obviously, Eleni, we just saw here in the trailer with the Spiritborn, and we saw a little bit about that spirit realm. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that spirit realm is?
Yeah, so I mean, to put it plainly, the spirit realm is a place where spirits go. It's this deeply spiritual place that's a byproduct of Sanctuary's creation. So, as you may know, the angels have the high heavens, the demons have the burning hells, and we have the spirit realm.
You know, we're hearing a little bit about the high heavens and the burning hells here, and players have actually seen both of those places specifically. Kind of like, what does the spirit realm actually look like for players?
Yeah, we really love this concept that the spirit realm is shaped by humanity. So if that's the case, the foundation of that would actually be Sanctuary. So you could imagine being in the middle of the jungle and you're surrounded by these tall trees and these ancient structures. And when you cross over the veil into the spirit realm, you're going to see a ghostly reflection of just that. The big key difference is that you're going to see all the spirits and the creatures that exist there.
Yeah, there are these massive creatures that protect the realm from spirits they protect the realm and the spirits from corruption. So the Spiritborn class have this harmonious bond and connection with these massive creatures that are called the Spirit Guardians, and they work together to ward the land.
It's awesome to hear about the Spirit Guardians, and people saw them in the trailer a little bit there. Can you actually tell us a little bit more about who these Spirit Guardians are?
Yeah, so if the spirit realm is shaped by humanity, we love the idea that the guardians are formed from human belief. And so if you're trying to survive in the jungle and protection is a thing that you are pouring all of your belief, your hope into, that belief it's magical. It's got power in itself, and it can actually create a creature that represents that. It could represent protection.
Yeah, so as Brent is saying, the Spirit Guardians are this complex creation of Sanctuary's creation along with this powerful human belief. And Spiritborns devote their entire lives strengthening this incredible bond because these Spirit Guardians are powerful. It's this idea, right, of what these gods look like. And so they can help protect both the realm and Nahantu.
We saw in the trailer and some of the gameplay, people were, if you're playing the Spiritborn, you can actually summon one of these in there. Is that something you can do on demand? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, very early on in concepting, we saw this one piece of a simple warrior raising their staff above their head and this massive spirit creature forming behind them. And that really became the lightning rod to a lot of thought-provoking ideas. I mean, we knew what we wanted to do mechanically with the class, but that image really solidified that the idea of summoning a god into battle was really cool, and that actually became the cornerstone for a lot of our development from then on out.
Yeah, so talking about spirit guardians and summoning them, the Spiritborn class can summon 4 spirit guardians. The first one that I want to talk about is Razoka, and this guardian manifests in the form of a jaguar. So the belief of courage and ferocity, striking on the hunt, attacking a kill with no fear or reservations. The second one is Balazan, appearing as this massive centipede. The belief is balance and persistence. So although some people might see it as fear, it represents harmony and balance, so the give and take of life. And then we have Quatli. The manifestation of this is a majestic eagle, right? So to represent awareness and finesse, soaring above it all, having keen awareness of its surroundings, and acting with intent. And then the last one is Woomba. This guardian manifests in a powerful gorilla, so this beacon of protection and strength, and a movable force that holds its ground and sustains under pressure.
So it's great because we've heard a little bit about the spirit realm. We've heard about these 4 awesome guardians. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of the star of the show now, the Spiritborn itself?
Yeah, so I think before we really dive in, I want to talk about Akarat, who's really important with the Spiritborn and the spirit realm. For those who don't know, Akarat is this prophet that believed in the human experience and that it gives us this unique power. We have this light within us. And that light gives us the ability to question and to doubt and to challenge. When Akarat made his way to his mother's homeland in Nahantu, he felt this strong otherworldly presence, and he would spend a lot of time with one of his apostles, Isavete, trying to uncover what this mystery was. What was this feeling when he got to the realm, or when he got to the land of Nahantu, until he eventually discovers this veil, and that's the veil between the spirit realm and sanctuary. And he realized that this was this untouched place from neither angels or demons. They had never really had any sort of influence there. So Akarat and his dedicant Isavete would spend a lot of time studying, and he would be the first person and living being to cross this veil. And then after Akarat died, his apostle would then take on the mantle and then found the Spiritborn traditions that we know today.
You know, hearing about the Spiritborn, and of course, I'm sure this is a burning question from the community, but the sanctuary has a long and storied history. Kind of where have the Spiritborn been throughout all of this?
Yeah, so for anybody who knows the lore of Diablo, this region is no stranger to Mephisto, right? So if you go back to Diablo 2 and you look at the story there, his original soul stone was imprisoned in this place. And its presence corrupted the Zakarum faith, it corrupted the region, and the Spiritborn remember this. And so over the course of what's been happening in D4, they've decided to stay at arm's length out of fear that history might repeat itself.
Yeah, so like I said before, this is an untouched realm. It's pure. This is something so sacred. And with Neyrel coming back with the Soul Stone, this is a huge problem for the people of Nahantu, but specifically the Spiritborn that are trying to protect this land.
Yeah, and at this point, with him back, they have no choice but to rejoin the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear more about the Spiritborn and where they originated from. And of course, thank you, Eleni, for taking us into the spirit realm in itself. You know, we've talked about the new class and how that was created and what they've been up to. Next, we're actually going to take a look at how the art and concepts were designed. We are now joined by my blood brother, art director, Nick Celano, who is here to show us how the Spiritborn visually came to be. Nick, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Adam. I'm really excited to talk about the Spiritborn finally.
I know, it's been a long time coming. Been a long time coming. Nick, will you tell us a little bit more about like how this class came to be, especially from the art side?
Yeah, first of all, like that trailer, like what an origin story for a Diablo class. Like you got to go into the jungle, you answer the call, or you're cold. Like it's pretty rock and roll, and on the art side, like we love that stuff. So I think when you go back to like what Eleni and Brent were talking about, we really want to capture everything they just mentioned from a visual standpoint. So for us, it's about trying to infuse the Hantu, the spirit realm, and a martial arts feel into the class. Brent mentioned that like kind of lightning rod moment. That's something that the art team really focuses on. When those moments happen, we really lock into that and start to do a lot of iteration. So like, concept will start casting a really wide net, but when that happens, we really start to bring it in and we start to really do a lot of concepts around that so that we can kind of get that tagline that the team needs, which is like creating the living, breathing embodiment of the spirit realm.
Yeah, and it's really, after we get past that initial inspirational piece, we want to like drill down into finding that iconic piece. And so when you look at some of the imagery that we're showing today, you can see how we're taking that embodiment and we're bringing it into all of the iconic look of that character. We wanted a class that wouldn't necessarily wear armor to protect themselves, but rather become the guardian that they're all about. And so if you're into the Jaguar, you're wearing the Jaguar helm. Your markings are the spots and patterns that you would see on that creature. The way that you move through the jungle would also be a big part of that package. And then once we have that iconic look, we can actually roll it out to the rest of the team.
Yeah, that's really the DNA of like where we start going. Like those iconic images drive the entire art department at that point. And that's our North Star. So we can move into things like, how do we get the Spirit Guardians on screen? How do they fit into the combat? If you think about the eagle, does the full eagle show up? Is it just feathers? How do we represent that? And how do we like ramp that up through our visuals so you can start with something, a little more on a certain scale and get to this like epic moment. We also want to explore, visually, like visual iconography at the same time. So while we're doing all that iteration and stuff with the iconic looks and the skills, we're also starting to get into like, what is the identity of the class? Where do we want to put this iconography? And like, what is that visual footprint that they're going to take up on the screen?
It's seeing all this like badass concept art. Like shout out to our concept artists on the art team.
Amazing.
Yeah, so good. Like how do you guys actually take this from like concept now to actually building out the character from some of this concept art?
Yeah, once we have alignment between the design direction that we want to go, we understand kind of roughly mechanically and from a design perspective where we want it to be and where we want it from an art direction standpoint. We sit down with each department and we actually roll out the idea. We pitch them, and we're like, hey, this is what we're thinking, and really get them to understand where we're trying to head so that when they go off in their crafts and make the best work that they possibly can make, the sum of all the parts end up with a killer class like the Spiritborn.
Collaboration's a big thing, and it really starts with the character art department. They take these like 2D images and bring them to life in 3D. They will start to figure out materials, the fine details of how our armor's crafted, to like big silhouette shapes. One of the interesting things about this class is we started to recognize that like the helms, the gauntlets, the belts were really great places to like hone in on those like visual elements. Yeah. And another nice thing is like the armor really started to kind of come into the space of being very functional and practical. You'll notice that like the legs are kind of open, the upper body's kind of open. It's because we're making a really fast, agile class. So we want everything to kind of line up. And like Brent said, like they don't need to be fully armored. They are protected by the Spirit Guardians. Their offense is their defense, and it shows when you play it. Speaking of fast and agile, we move to tech art. Tech art really is the team that will kind of find what our limits are and kind of allow us to break them a little bit. So they do a lot of range of motion tests. They're trying to figure out how we can get really dynamic poses, really dynamic lines of actions. And we want to push that because this class really needs us to kind of be in the spot where we're like kind of pushing the boundaries of what we've done normally.
Yeah, it's awesome because like you guys mentioned like super like hypermobile class and so the apex predator in the jungle itself. Like, how do you put that towards something like animation now? Like getting the character to move and kind of telegraphing that through that animation.
Yeah, like one of the key elements here is making sure that we have a combat archetype that's unique. So if you take a look at the original 5 classes, each one of them has a very distinct style. And so when we were thinking about the Spiritborn, we naturally went to martial arts. And what does that mean for the movement through the jungle? And actually, I feel like we found a really good pairing there.
Yeah, like the animation team, like they went crazy with reference. They were looking at Muay Thai, Taekwondo, kickboxing, boxing, karate. There was a stunt woman that did these amazing like reference materials that we saw. And the really interesting thing here is we're not trying to like just mimic a martial arts style. We're really trying to find the best pieces of them and seeing where they fit. How can we manipulate them? How can we rearrange them in ways that make a really unique and interesting fighting style for the Spiritborn? Once the animation team has that, and like they, again, they have a wide range of options that they're looking at, they start to figure out like where it fits for each guardian. So, for example, the gorilla is blunt force, lots of strength. The jaguar is cleaves, multi-hit combos, aggression. The centipede is like open palm strikes for applying poisons and unearthing things from the ground. And the eagle is about really precision movements and repositioning on the battlefield. So like they nailed it when it came to that.
Honestly, it's like the combination of all the things that we put together. We'd been talking about, it's like we've almost invented our own martial arts style for Diablo. And we'd been talking about this for the last few days with all the people that we've met with. And they actually said, hey, does it have a name? And currently it doesn't. So like for those of you at home, if you got ideas.
Check out the Spiritborn gameplay and like, if you have names, suggestions, like
we got to name
ears.
this thing.
Exactly, we're all ears.
That's right.
Well, we've heard about concept, and we've heard about character art, tech art, and now we just heard about animation. I always call it kind of like the frosting on the cake, and that is kind of VFX, and that makes everything kind of pop a little bit. How does VFX actually play into something like the Spiritborn?
Yeah, at this point, VFX is really they're an amazing bridge between like gameplay and the visuals of the game. And they had a really important lift, which was to try to figure out like, how do we represent like the spirit realm and these like elemental spirit guardians like together? What is that fantasy and what is that story we're telling? So Eleni mentioned earlier that like there's this veil, right? So we needed to understand like, how do you get the jaguar, for example, to like come through this veil, show up in Sanctuary, and exit through the veil? So visually, we're looking at like, what is the spirit realm? So we have this like kind of bluish white mist. They come in through the veil. That bluish white mist kind of like trails off of them. They become physical. The jaguar is now engulfed in flames. This spirit guardian. It kills everything on the screen that you can like that's around it, and then it exits through that veil and kind of like transitions into that blue-white mist again. That's a fantastic story for us to tell. And it also allows us to start to understand like what are our pieces with the VFX and how to then ramp up our basic skills to be maybe lean a little more into the elemental side, our core skills. We start to like kind of blend the two together. Maybe it's like the gorilla fish show up and they look like that spirit element. And then they, then you go into the ultimates where it's just like our spectacles like ramped up. And to be honest with you, like when it all comes together, like there is a feel to this class that is really awesome. Kind of like inherently martial arts has a rhythm and a cadence to it. This class has that. It's fantastic to look at. You feel it when you play it, and the art team, they killed it. They did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I gotta give another shout out to the Diablo 4 art team. Absolutely killed it. The Spiritborn is fantastic. It's great to look at, great to play. But Nick, thank you so much for walking us through the creation of the Spiritborn. Reminder for everyone watching from home, we'll actually be holding a Q&A at the end of today's Spiritborn Showcase, similar to how we always do with all our live streams. You can drop your questions in the Diablo Twitch chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible towards the end of the show. We've heard the lore, we've seen the art. Now let's get ready to talk about some gameplay. I know a lot of people are excited to hear more about how this class actually plays. So next up, we have Bjorn Mikkelsen, class designer, on stage to talk about the gameplay for the Spiritborn. Bjorn is actually here to tell us more about the Spiritborn's overall class kit and design. And later on, we'll get into some itemization, which I know every fan wants to hear about because itemization is, of course, incredible, especially within Diablo. Bjorn, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I know Bjorn will be a fan favorite here because
Yeah,
he's going to walk us through all the skills and the gameplay for how it works. So Bjorn, can you kick us off and tell us a little bit about this new class?
Absolutely. So yeah, just like high level, like what is this class? Excellent question. So basically what Spiritborn are, they are these jungle warriors who are empowered by the spirits. They're sort of this dexterity focused class and sort of masters of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. And so what they do is ultimately all of their actions and their movements, they sort of resonate with the spirits to form sort of these unique combat styles as they're fighting. They sort of mix and match them to hit whatever sort of build they need.
Awesome. So if you are a current Diablo player right now, or let's say I'm a current Diablo player, which I am, I play a lot of Rogue or Barb, where would you kind of place the speed and aggression of the Spiritborn?
Yeah, I would say Spiritborn is definitely probably our fastest, most aggressive class. It's got multiple gap closers built into its basic attacks. It's got several movement skills, very high damage on those, as well as several ways to upgrade its evade skill as well. It's all about kind of getting on a target, sticking to it, and killing it.
Awesome. I know we had footage earlier of within the trailer of players actually being able, and we talked about this earlier, players being able to actually summon in these spirit guardians. So can you just summon a giant jaguar into battle or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, kind of in addition to being these master martial artists, because they're empowered by these spirits, you'll see parts of the spirits, but then ultimately with the ultimates, the spirits themselves will show up on the battlefield and they'll empower you and deal damage.
And it's really the core of the fantasy, right? If we talk about power fantasies, summoning the god into battle is the power fantasy for this class. One of the things that I really liked about that is that we were getting a bunch of feedback early on about making ultimates more meaningful, and we were actually able to do that with this class ground up.
Awesome. I know people are probably dying to know, okay, let's jump into some spirit guardians. So I think this is a great opportunity. Maybe we should start off with the Jaguar being the first one. Bjorn, do you want to take us through the Jaguar itself?
Sure. Yeah, starting off, Jaguar is a great one. Jaguar is, as we've kind of touched on before, it is sort of this manifestation of just the hunter. It's exhilaration, it's violence, it's aggression. It's attacking repeatedly, kind of just constant pressure as it's going. It's got these ramping mechanics to it. It's got lots of kill streaks. Mechanically speaking, the way we've kind of translated this, its primary focus is attack speed, and it chases that through a new keyworded mechanic that we call ferocity. This is a stacking buff that it can generate, usually via Jaguar skills, that will increase the attack speed of all of its skills, but it will also enhance other Jaguar skills so you can use them more often, reduce their cooldowns, that sort of thing. Moving on to an example, I guess, of a Jaguar skill. First off, here's one we have Ravager. This is a new type of skill we're adding to the game called Incarnate skills. They all have a passive and active effect. This one allows you to maintain your ferocity at just a minimum level, so you're all just a little bit fast. But then when you activate it, you kind of go full Jaguar mode. It gives you additional attacks, kind of whenever you hit something, it does an extra strike. So it can even turn skills that are deal a little bit less damage, they can now deal extra damage just whenever you hit something. Moving on to another skill, we have Rushing Claw. This one is the Jaguar's kind of primary mobility skill. It will dash you through a target and slash everything along the way. And the key to this one is you can kind of use it over and over and over again, multi-strike your enemies. And then finally, of course, we have the ultimate, the Hunter. This will actually manifest the Jaguar onto the battlefield. You'll leap through the air. It's also a movement skill. And when you land, the Jaguar will destroy everything. And it also has upgrades to kind of help chase the kill streak vibe. There's a chance to reset the cooldown after you kill something with it.
Yeah, so if you look at all of these things as a package, you start to see almost a combat archetype built into each guardian themselves. And that was actually something that was really important to us. So if you were speccing into the Jaguar, it's important to those types of players who do want to keep the attack speed up, that do want to keep their kill streaks going. And you're going to see this as like a through line that each particular guardian will have their own thing.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the fast, frantic gameplay, and I will say I have a little bit of bias towards the Jaguar for sure. But I know we want to go on to the other guardians for sure. And for all our tanky friends out there, Bjorn, do you want to walk us through the Gorilla?
Absolutely. Yeah, moving on to the Gorilla. The Gorilla. Core concept behind protection and defense, but it's not just like passive defense. This is a very active defensive play style where you're shrugging off the damage, but you're also returning it to your attacker. So it's really got this kind of core of like retribution also sort of built into it. Its core mechanic and stat that we work with is damage reduction. It chases us in two ways. One is through using block, sort of actively blocking damage, as well as a second new keyworded mechanic called resolve. This is also a stacking buff, but this one falls off whenever you get hit, so it's really important to keep stacking it and kind of keep stealing yourself and building your resolve back up, but as long as you have any stacks of it, you get the full damage reduction bonus. So moving on to just a couple examples for Gorilla skills. Starting off, we have Crushing Hand. This is their core spender skill. Kind of just does what it says. We'll smash your enemies to pieces. Kind of neat thing about it is it's actually two separate attacks that kind of overlap in the middle. So you can sort of prioritize a single target and deal double damage to it. Another attacking skill that we have, this one's Payback. This one really leans hard into the sort of aspect of retribution that we have going on. This one will deal a large amount of damage, and that damage will ramp up the more something has hit you, so it's really good for just like ending a fight if you need to. But also like as things are hitting you, that will reduce its cooldown. So kind of you have this flow of like being able to sort of like end fights, but also kind of keep hitting as you go. And then finally, again, we have the ultimate skill, bringing in the Gorilla itself. The skill is called the Protector. It creates a large protected area on the battlefield that will grant you barrier while you're inside of it, as well as several other defensive bonuses that you can spec into with it. And the Gorilla will just smash any enemies that try to come and harm you while you're in it.
Yeah, if you like that bruiser archetype, like this is the build for you. It is definitely about that give and take of damage. I mean, you'd said it earlier, anyone who's been looking for a tank or a tank-like build in Diablo, this is the one that you're going to want to spec into as a part of your kit.
Yeah, it sounds like a really unique way of being able to, especially for tank players, to like bring damage to enemies and stuff like that, which is so awesome. So next, on to our third guardian. Of course, we have the Eagle. Bjorn, do you want to take us through the Eagle?
Yeah, so the Eagle, kind of soaring above it all, we've got this guardian that represents precision and accuracy and kind of finesse. Its ability, its freedom of movement, like a lot of the movement that the class has is very aggressive, very in your face, and the Eagle really is able to kind of take that to another level and kind of go wherever it wants. In addition to that, it can also sort of like extend its attacks to sort of pseudo-ranged playstyle. Allows it to really like prioritize a target and sort of like hit from anywhere. So its core stat that it cares about is movement speed. That allows it kind of, like I said, able to kind of go anywhere it wants and sort of tactically reposition on the battlefield. And it also has several ways to sort of amplify its evade skill, adding damage, that sort of thing to it. So moving into just a couple examples, we of course have to start off with Soar. This is sort of Spiritborn's premier mobility skill. Takes you up into the air, out of the battle for a second, able to dodge mechanics with that if you need to. But also, because the Eagle is all about kind of those big impacts as well, it will create a target area where you're going to come down and make those enemies vulnerable so that it just amplifies the damage when you land. Moving on to another example, we have Razor Wings. This is a damaging skill for the Eagle. This one has kind of this cool back and forth where it sends it out, allows you to hit something at range, but because it also returns to you, it sort of rewards you for the tactical positioning on the battlefield, so you can sort of line it up so it'll hit different things as it comes back. And then, of course, our ultimate skill, the Seeker, bringing in the Eagle itself to just annihilate your enemies with damage. You can cast it anywhere on the battlefield. It charges up and then blasts off. The blast can be upgraded to be a guaranteed critical strike, and while it's on the battlefield, it will also make everything vulnerable for you. This is also like one of the first ultimates that we have, which will have multiple charges, so you can kind of use it back to back or like prioritize a target with it, and there's like a lot of player agency with that.
Yeah, this is really for that tactical player. You know, where positioning is super important. You don't necessarily want to be constantly in the fray, so you still want to output that damage. Maybe you want to put it in a particular place in the encounter, but you can do it by going in and then you can get right back out. So for those players who really like that tactical positioning, that's what the Eagle is for.
Yeah, it seems like the Eagle gives you that extra freedom of like in mobility, so you can kind of move in and out, especially with things like soar, which is sick to see for sure.
It's one of my favorites.
So unique for Diablo 4 for sure on that end. Last but not least, of course, this is probably our most unique spirit guardian, and probably one that I'm sure a lot of people are like looking at and going like, oh, this has got to be crazy, and that is the centipede. So Bjorn, how's the centipede play out?
Yeah, so moving to the centipede. The centipede's very unique. It represents this sort of abstract concept of the cycle of life and death, and the way we've kind of chosen to interpret that is that it's sort of this epicenter of attrition, but it's also like really about just kind of like this endless or inescapable sort of persistence, and that's like really bad for your enemies, but kind of really good for you. So its core mechanics that it works with that persistence is damage over time, poisoning, crowd controls, that sort of thing, but then it uses those things to sort of empower and sustain itself, so also like leeching life and that sort of thing back to you, sort of draining your enemies as you kill them. So moving on to just a quick example, Stinger is our core skill for the centipede. This one does a large amount of damage in a small area in front of you, but the sort of interesting thing about it is that that damage will also echo out to any nearby poisoned enemies. So it kind of has this adaptive, like, dynamic range that it has, sort of depending on like how much you've been spreading your poisons around the field. So it can like basically like hit the whole screen if you really want to. Another skill example that we have would be Scourge. Scourge kind of takes that sort of like oppressive control that the centipede has, and it will fear and it will slow and poison enemies and sort of disrupt any kind of like strategies they might have going on and just sort of allow you to turn the tables on them. And then finally, we have the ultimate skill, bringing in the centipede itself onto the battlefield. This is the Devourer. Poison laser beams, globs of poison everywhere. Just the centipede kind of wrecking the entire battlefield. It's got upgrades which will also allow it to instantly execute enemies who have been fully poisoned, sort of helping the cycle of life and death to speed up a little bit there.
Yeah, this is clearly our most Diablo guardian that we have. It's becoming a fan favorite very quickly. Well, the people who have gotten a hands-on with it have a lot to say about it. But the cool thing about this one is we took on a really unique design challenge. Like, how do you take a concept of damage over time, dealing damage, regenerating life, and make that kind of the core of an entire archetype? I thought you guys did a fantastic job at getting it there. For those type A players who really want to manipulate the field and keep that damage up and keep that resilience going, this is definitely that class for you.
Yeah, I have to call out. It's so crazy seeing a giant centipede behind me right now. But I know a lot of players at home are probably looking at each of these 4 spirit guardians and they're going like, hey, this is probably the one I'm going to go with, just seeing some of the gameplay and some of the play styles. But I think one big question that probably a lot of people have is, are you kind of forced to go down one of these, or can you actually do some mix and match, or how does that work?
You know, freedom of choice is really important for this class. So if you want to go all in on one of them, go for it. Like, there's no problem doing that. There's benefits that you can see from it, but there's also benefits from mixing and matching. Like, we wanted adaptability and hybridization to be at the core of this class. So it's been a goal from the very beginning to actually get that there. So when you get hands-on with this, like, you're going to want to experiment. We want you to experiment. We know that there's going to be many builds that are very emergent, and I actually can't wait to see some of the cool stuff that people come up with once this goes live.
Yeah, exactly. Like, at its heart, Spiritborn is really all about like personalization, sort of expressing yourself. And so like, whichever spirit sort of resonates with you, we really want to allow you to mix and match them kind of to your heart's content, and sort of make that play style choice like fully customizable. And the primary way that we're doing that, or the main way that we're doing that, is the Spiritborn's class mechanic called Spirit Hall. The way the Spirit Hall works is you start your journey off by choosing one of 4 bonuses at the top, the primary bonus. This is a like massive bonus that will add sort of a thematic effect to all of your skills of that type. So like an effect like the Jaguar will add extra strikes and that sort of thing to all your Jaguar skills. But a subtle but very important extra piece of this is that we'll also add that spirit's tag to your entire skill kit. So every single part of your skill kit now has the Jaguar skill. And so even if you want to use like centipede skills, you can still sort of hook into various parts of the Jaguar using this bonus. Then later on in your journey, you will unlock a second bonus. This is a set of 4 distinct bonuses from the first. Each of these kind of has a tie-in with the sort of core mechanics of each of the spirits. So we mentioned before sort of the new keywords that we were introducing, like with the Jaguar has ferocity, the Gorilla has resolve, those sorts of things. These give you an opportunity to sort of mix those into your kit, regardless of like if you are using those specific skills or not, and sort of like add that extra layer on top of your build. And when you're choosing these spirits, these can absolutely be the same. You can pick Gorilla and Gorilla, Jaguar and Jaguar, or you can mix and match them. And it's really important that like they all kind of flow and work together.
So if you look at the nesting doll effect that we have of your skill tree, your class mechanic, this can get complicated very quickly. And so one of the things that the team took on was this idea of finding what resonates most with each guardian and how do we create some level of overlap so that we can have some synergies between all of them.
Yeah, exactly. As we hit, like each of these has like very clear themes, right? You've got the Jaguar with its attack speed, you've got the Gorilla with its protection. You can definitely build into those, but it was important for us to sort of establish that these spirits, they don't exist like in isolation from each other. They have overlap. They have things that they both care about, and that allows us to sort of create these very hybrid-esque builds that work together. You know, just like an example, right? You've got like the Jaguar is a hunter. It's all about aggression and kind of chaos. And that's a thing. It loves that. But as a hunter, you're also sort of providing, you're also sustaining yourself, which is a thing that the centipede also loves to do. And so they both care about healing, and they both have like different hooks that they can do for that. And so you can really like, if you're looking to get more healing into your build, you can add some centipede, you can add some Jaguar, mix them together, you can make an entire build about healing that is centipede and Jaguar. These aren't like prescribing ways to build, but they're more so just like they're overlapping stats that allow them to sort of communicate with each other. So just a couple examples. We have, for instance, if you want to build like the Gorilla, Gorilla's a lot of protection, Jaguar's a lot of sort of chaotic, constant damage. So when you mix those two together, you get this sort of like semi-tanky brawler who can just kind of go toe-to-toe with anything. And they sort of like dip into the stat of dodge, because dodge is a little bit inherently a slightly more RNG, a little bit more chaotic, kind of Jaguar, but it also kind of has that damage mitigation. And so you kind of combine them together and you have this very like retribution, but also fast-paced playstyle. Another example would be potentially if we think about like the centipede and the eagle. The centipede's all about sort of debilitating your enemies and like making them weaker, and the eagle's all about like kind of finding those weak points and like getting these high damage, you know, bursts off. So when you add those two together, they both care about vulnerable and sort of like turning the tables on all of your enemies. And so adding that together kind of creates this character that's sort of just able to like prioritize a target, weaken it, and then just like cull it from the battlefield.
Yeah, it's. I'm so glad Bjorn brought all these like really good examples for us. He's got a lot of footage for us to go through. It's awesome to see all these skills and how they work with the actual spirit guardians. And of course, the big popular topic that comes with every single class is itemization. And I know we have a lot to talk about with legendary aspects and some uniques as well. So Bjorn, Brent, like how does itemization work with Spiritborn?
Yeah, we all know that itemization is the heart of the game, right? And as we've been moving through our itemization journey with this game, we've had a really great opportunity to fold in all the feedback and how that applies to the Spiritborn as we've been developing. And one of the cool things that we did was took the opportunity to actually lean into the things that you get from items and see how they build into the spirit's abilities themselves. So we're going to show a few examples of that. Now this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming, but we thought we'd do a really quick breakdown and show you what that looks like.
Yeah, so just hitting a couple examples, you know, we have added this large suite of Spiritborn legendaries and uniques to the game. But just to break down kind of some of our thoughts as we were working with them, sort of the types of legendaries you can expect to see. You know, one example, as we were just speaking about sort of these hybridization things, there's a lot of different stats in our game and sort of making them work together, not just like work together, but like be cool together. So we kind of have this category of items that will sort of interweave a couple of different stats. Secondly, we have our power augmentation legendaries. These just kind of let you take like your favorite skill and ascend it to its final form and just kind of like go crazy with it. And then thirdly, we have sub-powers. These are sort of things like, we think of them like rogue grenades, barbarian, dust devils. These are sort of things you can sort of build around. They're sort of almost like skills, but they don't exist in your skill tree as things you can put on your bar. And then finally, we have our unique items, which are there to enable you to sort of make the craziest builds you can think of. So moving on to a couple examples, just kind of one for each real quick. We have Tormentors. This is an example of a hybridization legendary. This one interweaves poisoning and thorns together, kind of in an interesting way that'll allow you to apply your thorns, in a different way than just like having something hit you all the time. It's great. You can probably see the connection. Gorilla Centipede, they'll love this sort of thing. Moving on to an example of a power augmentation, we have Bristling Vengeance. This takes the payback seal that we kind of hit on before. Usually it's like a smaller AoE like right in front of you that just hits one enemy, but this one really allows it to sort of like extend its range, hit multiple enemies, as well as apply your thorns over an area. And then thirdly, we have an example of one of our sub-powers. This one's called a Pestilent Swarm. The cool thing that we're kind of trying to out with each of our sub-powers is there are multiple legendaries for them, and they sort of allow you to customize how they work. So there's like one that'll let your Pestilent Swarm like poison enemies, one that'll make it spiral, one that'll even make it orbit. You can sort of like combine those, like you can have it orbit and spiral, or poison. You can just have it shoot off, kind of whatever works for your build. We really want people to be able to experiment and play with those sub-powers. And then just a couple of teasers, some of our uniques. These are some unique boots that basically allow you to override your evade skill with soar, just get the ultimate amount of mobility you can think of. The neat thing about that is also that it allows you potentially like to take soar off your bar. You can't let it go, but you at least kind of get to keep it with you in that evade slot. And then another example would be our unique quarterstaff, which is one of the two weapons we're adding with the Spiritborn. This one sort of allows you to ramp up your basic attacks. Spiritborn's basic attacks are a little bit special. They're kind of really cool. They're these 3-hit combos, and each third hit does like a special thing. And this specific unique basically lets you get that third attack all the time. So then we have to take their third attack and make it a triple version that almost turns them into a different skill entirely.
Yeah, this is awesome. Seeing all the couple of examples of uniques. As Brent mentioned, this is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
I personally would take the soar boots all day. Being able to use soar as an evade is absolutely amazing. But I want to give a huge thanks to Bjorn for walking us through all the skills, especially associated with the Spirit Guardians, and of course the itemization across the whole entire class. We will actually have an extensive look for the entire community after the show on our blog. It will provide a great amount of detailed mention here immediately following the stream, so you can check it out and do a deeper dive with the Spiritborn yourself. Now we're going to bring back everyone to get into our Q&A for all things Spiritborn. Now we're ready for our community Q&A, where we'll answer your burning questions for all things Spiritborn. If you have questions, again, please drop them in Twitch chat, and we'll try to get through as many as possible through the whole entire Q&A process. Thank you guys for joining us. We did some musical chairs to get everyone back up here during that quick little interstitial. I know as questions are coming up, one big question that everyone always asks, and I know we've probably seen it a million times in chat already, is like, hey, we have the Spiritborn. This is a brand new class. Why not something like a class from a prior game, like a paladin or something from that?
Yeah, right out of the gate, right?
Right out of the gate.
You know, when we started off, one of the key things that were really important to us was to make sure that the class came from the place that we were going. We also knew that, you know, we did a really good job at revisiting classic archetypes like the barbarian and the necro. And so we were in this position where doing something new was a great opportunity. It was something that allowed us to inject some fresh gameplay in, and going after the Spiritborn was a wider palette to play with. And so making sure that we were building something from the ground up from Nahantu was really the driving factor of this, and we're very proud of where we landed at today.
Awesome. Another question that this is everyone. This is the first time you guys are explaining. This is everyone's favorite moment where I butcher Twitch names like no other. But Arcphoenix asks, "Wait, the lore. Like, where have the Spiritborn been in D3, D2? Why are they not fighting Mephisto themselves?"
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before. Like, this is a religion that has been building up over time. They're a little more secluded, and really one of the things that we looked at is like the early exploration of Akarat, right?
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't much development that was going in, so that was like a new frontier for us to work with.
Yeah, and in general, the Spiritborn, which you'll notice when you do play the game, they are very scattered throughout Nahantu. It's not like they have this massive presence where you walk in and you're like, there they are. You know, it's like a little different than that. They're hidden, they're in the jungle, and they don't necessarily want to be seen. And this has sort of been the idea this entire time. It takes a lot of devotion to be a Spiritborn. This isn't something that you can hop in and out of. So when we talk about being a Spiritborn, these are people who have devoted their entire lives to be doing this one thing, and that's what they're doing in Nahantu. They're not exploring really.
I know we've actually gotten a few questions about this specifically. And this is a pretty good question for Bjorn and Nick, because a lot of people have noticed, like, hey, quarterstaff and new weapons. Like, what are the new weapon types for Spiritborn specifically?
Sure. Yeah, Spiritborn's bringing 2 new weapons with it. First off, we have the glaive, kind of its premier weapon that you see in all the key art. That's really the weapon for like a hunter. It's great for like taking down priority enemies. It's got built-in elite damage, that sort of thing. And then the second weapon we're adding is the quarterstaff. This is a faster weapon that they can use to even sort of like add like block chance and that sort of thing to it. So it's almost like a little bit of a pseudo defensive weapon, but it's also got very high attack speed.
Yeah, from a fantasy standpoint, it was really cool to like try to create weapons that made sense for, again, like Brent mentioned, like where the class is from. So like, you know, a glaive makes a lot of sense for like cutting through the jungle, you know, being an aggressive weapon, being an attack-based weapon. The quarterstaff is really cool because it's like, you could imagine like, how do they train with this? They probably found like really strong branches from like trees that were really important to them, and they start to like train with that, and eventually they kind of start to perfect that craft and that bow staff. So there's a lot of really cool fantasy that we can, like, the art team can really dig into.
It also looks cool.
Yeah.
Like just to be frank, like if we're talking about a martial arts class, like having the bow staff or the glaive to like really extend some of those key poses that we got with the martial arts stuff that we put into the game. I mean, it looks really good.
Yeah, it's awesome to see like new weapons for the Spiritborn with Vessel of Hatred. So another question that we have here, this is from Bucko351, easy name. Question, what's the difference between the Spiritborn and the Druid class? The Druid class currently has bonds with like the stag, the wolf, the eagle, and the snake. Like what's kind of the changes between that and something like the Spiritborn?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Spiritborn, you're not necessarily turning into this animal that we're talking about. This is a spirit guardian that lives in the spirit realm, and you're channeling this spirit guardian, and the manifestation that we're talking about is what comes out. So when we talk about like ferocity or something, that's something that you see in the jungle, right? So you have this jaguar that's recognizable, and that's this manifestation. It's the best way to show that. So if we had a different belief, then it would manifest in a different way. Versus the druid, you sort of really encompass the entire animal.
And you see that in the gameplay quite a bit, where I think, Nick, you were mentioning before, where it's like, yeah, I have this bond with the centipede. When I call him in, I call the centipede in to deal with this side of the combat, and then I go off and I start managing the other side of the combat. So you really see this like combat partnership between the Guardians and the Spiritborn, which is incredibly unique.
We got a question here from Kat the Dewey. They're asking, we've seen 4 Spirit Guardians. Are there other Spirit Guardians that were considered potentially?
Yeah, look, I'll spill the beans. I'll talk about it. You know, when we're choosing the spirits, we played around with a lot of concepts. Super abstract stuff that weren't animal-based. We talked about, okay, if I'm from the jungle, these things would probably represent things I know, which brought us to animals. And when we think about protection and strength, we originally had some conversations around an elephant. Like, what does an elephant mean? If there's a animal that represents like family and protection the most, the elephant is one of those. The gorilla was also being talked about at the same time, and they mean the same thing. So when we looked at them side by side, that really came down to like which one can convey the best powers, what gives you the right movement and visuals that you would need for the power set itself.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to say, like, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, there's a lot of collaboration, and sometimes art will inform design, design will inform art. So I think this is a great spot where, like Brian was saying, like, we're looking at a lot of different things, but like when you think about Nahantu, when you think about like the canopy of the jungle, and you start thinking about how does that protect what's in the jungle, like the gorilla just made a lot of sense, like thematically. So like we start to find those moments, right? And you think about the centipede, it's like there's like the ground and the roots of the jungle, like what comes up, there's insects. So, you know, we spent a lot of time like exploring that. But when you think about the gameplay connection, poisons, fears, right? The centipede, that this like life and death kind of cycle they talked about, like the centipede makes a lot of sense. So we really start to try to connect the dots in really interesting ways. And those are the ones that really stick.
Fictionally, the idea that these things are created based on human beliefs, we believe in more than 4 things, right? So the idea that we could expand this out well beyond the class, we've developed more lore than you're actually going to see in the game for the Spiritborn, because we want this thing to live beyond just Diablo 4.
Awesome. I know this one's a little bit for Bjorn. We'll test his skill knowledge here, but a question from Churney Fire was, does the echoing poison effect work on enemies not poisoned by you? Is there like a radius limit? Like, how does it work specifically?
Yeah, there's a small radius limit to it, but that can be extended through things like tempering and that sort of thing. It will do any poisoned enemies on the screen.
Oh, nice. That sounds crazy. So yeah, and then we have a question from Crawling Out of the Spiral. This one's a lore question specifically. Did Mephisto know about the veil between Sanctuary and the Spirit Realm, and like the corruption within the jungles during Diablo 2? Like, was he able to sense it during that time? I know we had talked about like the Spirit Realm being this pure and like untouched place. So.
Yeah, we can definitely assume that Mephisto knew there was something there. When it comes to the lore of Nahantu, there are a lot of protection that happened during Mephisto's corruption. He wasn't able to break through the veil, so that is something that, you know, that's why it's so dire now. But definitely he had this feeling for sure.
Question for not MVP. How does the resource for the Spiritborn work? Do they generate it like passively, or how does that work specifically?
Sure. The Spiritborn's primary resource is called Vigor. It does not inherently recharge passively. You'll generate it by using your basic attacks. But sort of like the key with Spiritborn being very customizable, like one of the first choices that you'll be able to make in your tree with your basic attacks is you can sort of like customize like how you will build the spirit beyond that, whether it's like by poisoning enemies or by blocking damage, that sort of thing, to really like kind of make the resource work the way you want it to work. And then later on, there are also some uniques that will allow you to further customize sort of like how your build influences the resource generation.
Awesome. I know we just talked about the weapons and stuff, and there's like follow-up questions of like, are the Spiritborn only using 2-handed weapons for this class?
Yes.
The short answer.
Yes. They are. The other question that we're getting is, is there like a special quest for before you can actually start a Spiritborn or create a Spiritborn? Are there quests that are maybe specific to the class itself?
Yeah, well, we're going to definitely be introducing the class mechanic similarly to the way that we introduced it with the other classes. As far as the beginning of the story is concerned, you know, we really want to jump straight into continuing the chapter of hatred, right? Like what happened when Narelle left. We want to jump right into it, get right back into the story, and so we're going to pick up from the perspective where Narelle left off.
Awesome. That was a question from Agar. I forgot to throw out the name. I do want to give people shout outs when they do actually ask the names. The Grim Knot asks, does the Spiritborn have ties maybe with the Witch Doctor in any type of way from Diablo 3?
Not at all. When Brent is talking about creating something new, that's what we wanted to do with the Spiritborn. That also meant really diving into lore and figuring out a separation for freshness. We wanted to still bring in things that were familiar from D2 and just lore in general that we know about, but when it comes to the Spiritborn class and the traditions of the Spiritborn, they're very new. You get a chance to explore it in the game, and you'll see that they're very different.
Awesome. Azeron Blood Moon asks, how much is the monk inspired into the gameplay of the Spiritborn?
You know, it's we always look back and we can find like a lot of reference, or we can be inspired by things we've made. But I think when you play the class, you'll see it's extremely different. It's so unique, it's so fresh, and it kind of carves its own space in our kind of lineup that after an inspirational point, maybe of looking at like martial arts at just the core, it just kind of goes off in its own direction and kind of redefines that space.
We're gonna. Oh, sorry. Go. No, go
well,
ahead.
I definitely want to add to that. Is like I don't want to be shy about the fact that we know what works mechanically in the game, and so we're constantly looking at inspiration for the existing classes, for the new classes, on what works best.
Mm-hmm.
Take that inspiration and then like take a right turn and actually amplify it or take it into a slightly new direction that makes it very different.
I know we have time for one more question. This is a question for everyone here. What is everyone's favorite spirit? I've already revealed mine, which is Jaguar. But like, what is everyone's favorite spirit guardian here for the Spiritborn?
I mean, I can start. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna say 2. I love the Jaguar as well, but it's just a little bit too chaotic for me, like inherently. And so I love to just like mix the eagle in there as well, just for a little bit more control, a little bit more like freedom.
Gorilla. I mean, when I saw it show up on screen, beat its chest, and it was just awesome. It was like, that's it.
I knew it. We're like wrestling buds, you know, where we talk about wrestling all the time. I'm not surprised Nick is about like the gorilla. Not surprised.
My favorite guardians are Quatli, the eagle, and Balazon, the centipede. I just love the poison, and it's sick. Like, it looks crazy.
Yeah, for me, Jaguar, like it started with that iconic piece. Yeah, sorry, we're gonna have to share a little bit.
Hold on a second.
But like the movement, it's such a pace changer for the game. Like once you get into it, it's got a very addictive flow, and so I'm all in on the Jaguar.
Well, it's awesome to hear everyone's favorite Spirit Guardians. I do want to thank you all for jumping in for this Q&A. Before we do close out the stream, we did want to let everyone know that we'll be sharing more about Vessel of Hatred at Gamescom this year on August 20th. But you'll actually have a chance to attend Gamescom yourself and play the Spiritborn in person. We're actually sending 5 lucky players to Cologne, Germany to play the Spiritborn at our Gamescom booth in person. Make sure to check out our Instagram at PlayDiablo and read our blog for full details on the contest after the show. Everyone on the Diablo team is incredibly excited for you to check out the new class coming with Vessel of Hatred on October 8th. And of course, you can pre-purchase the expansion now. Stick around to check out our Diablo creators, Rax, Woody, Macro Bioboy, and Fame. They're actually upstairs right now, streaming live here at Xbox Studios with Spiritborn gameplay. Also, shout out to Xbox Studios for hosting us. We really appreciate it. And of course, you can check out Kind of Funny Games after the stream, where they'll be live chatting with Rod Ferguson, GM of the Diablo franchise. Brent, Eleni, Nick, Bjorn, thank you for being here to walk us through the Spiritborn. And thank you all, and everyone at home for tuning in. We'll see you in Nahantu.